Hello, Duality of Wrestling dudes and divas. I am Christian with Duality of Wrestling podcast. Thanks so much for coming back and checking out the channel. And we have a big show to preview today. AEW's Grand Slam Mexico is coming up in 36 short hours, less if you're watching this later on. So get even more hype if you're watching this the day of the show or even closer to start time. But we have a massive, massive show emanating from Arena Mexico, and it is as stacked as any Dynamite I've ever seen. So let's jump right into it. For the first match on the card, we have the Casino Gauntlet number one spot three-way match. So basically, this will be the match to determine who has the number one spot in the Casino Gauntlet match at All In, which will earn the winner a number one contendership spot against the AEW World Championship holder coming out of All In. So the participants in this three-way match to determine that number one spot in the gauntlet match are Tommaso Ciampa, Andrade El Idolo, and Commander. So this is going to be an incredibly fun match. Ciampa, Andrade, and Commander have been stellar in the ring, specifically for Ciampa ever since he stepped foot in AEW, which is just over 6 months ago. Andrade has gone from poorly booked in his previous stop and in his first run at AEW being a little bit lackluster despite prominence of booking, and in turn becoming one of the most beloved baby faces right now, who is mega over. And then Commander, who is just so good in the ring and so consistent every time out there. I'm really glad he is getting a chance to show out and showcase here. Now, who do we think emerges victorious from this? I do think it's going to be Andrade. We have not in too far of the distant past had Ciampa taking the number one spot in a gauntlet match back. I believe it was for the AEW National Championship a couple pay-per-views ago. So Ciampa has more recently been the number one spot holder in a gauntlet match, so I don't think it's going to be him. And similarly, Commander, while he has been great, I don't think he quite has the tier level to be put at the number one spot in a gauntlet match at the All In pay per view for the World Heavyweight Championship. Doesn't make sense to me. So to me, I think that's going to be Andrade El Idolo's spot. The only thing that I think could keep that from being the case is if Andrade is going to end up defending that national championship at the pay per view itself. If that's the case, I don't see Andrade pulling double duty at the show, and then maybe it would go to Ciampa. That might make a bit more sense. Especially if you were to pair Ciampa up with, let's say, Jericho as being the number two guy in that gauntlet match. That could, reignite their feud a little bit and give us something hot to go into the gauntlet match with. That could make a decent bit of sense. So I'm going to say, to me, what makes the most sense is Andrade El Idolo winning and being the number one spot holder for the gauntlet match, but that is the caveat with as long as he does not defend that national championship. If he does, I think we can pretty strongly pencil in Ciampa for the win in this match. So that's my prediction. Andrade with caveats. If those aren't not met, Ciampa. Now we have a crazy 8-man tag team match between the AEW World Tag Team Champions, Cage and Cope, teaming up with the Young Bucks of Matt and Nick Jackson, who will be their opponents at All In for those tag titles, taking on the Death Riders of Danny Garcia, Jon Moxley, and Pac, as well as Wheeler Yuta. So it is all four of those Death Riders members, minus Claudio Castagnoli. Wow. There's a lot going on here. This is going to be a lot of fun. The Bucks are going to, probably be the workhorse guys in this match alongside Pac, Yuta, and Garcia. Garcia, my hat's off to him after the excellent showing he had against Will Ospreay on Collision. So, they've been doing a lot of great things on the lower tier of the Death Rider side lately. Wheeler Yuta is still incredibly over as a heel, and Pac always shows out. Plus, Moxley's going to be there as the leader figurehead role. I'm curious to see what his interactions with Cage and Cope could be like. Those are guys who haven't shared the ring a great deal of yet. So I'm curious to see what, if anything, transpires there. But I think a lot of this is going to be used as a vehicle to build tension between Cage and Cope and the Bucks heading into their big tag title match. So I'm going to say the Death Riders come out of this one victorious. Cage and Cope and the Bucks don't really need a win here. They're both already in title matches at All In, whereas the Death Riders have kind of been a little bit more languishing of late, Moxley not included, obviously. Obviously, they had Will Ospreay defect relatively recently. They were unsuccessful in challenging for the tag team championships. They lost the match to the Young Bucks at the pay-per-view. So I think the Death Riders are going to have to get a little bit of that heat back here. And winning this match in Arena Mexico, I think makes sense. And it will facilitate some slowly building bad blood between Cage and Cope and the Young Bucks. So to me, I think the Death Riders take this one. Speaking of multi-man championships, we have the AEW World Trios title being defended. The Demand, who just won these belts last week and already defended them at Collision, so big ups to the Demand for being heel fighting champions, 3 times in, less than a week at this point. Will be taking on the newly formed and rapidly gaining momentum, especially in the IWC Trios team of Adam Page and Brodito, that is Bandito and Brody King. I do not see the Demand losing the Trios titles this soon. It's going to be a super fun match. Obviously, Page and Brodito are going to be incredibly over in Arena Mexico. Page with his bilingual nature, Bandito, being from Mexico, that's going to be a big thing. And Brody King is beloved everywhere he goes. So they're going to be super hot for the baby faces. The Demand might not be the most over heel team, but they're going to be great foils for the newly put together team of the good, the bad, and the ugly, which was a really fun way of using these characters to interact with Brody not knowing who the ugly one was back on Dynamite. That was good and shows off the personalities of these guys a little bit. I do think that the Demand retain here. I don't think it would make sense to throw Trios Gold on this newly formed team quite yet. Maybe a little bit down the road. I would say All Out, but I'm more thinking along the lines of Full Gear or Wrestle Dream. I just think we have done very little well with the Trios Championships probably over the last year. And I think a lot of work needs to be done rehabbing that championship. And that starts with giving a team that is very fully gelled together and not quickly put together time to hold these belts and raise their prominence levels. Plus, you also have the Lethal Twist, who are sort of on the sidelines of the Demand, but always that specter of them is looming to potentially interfere. I think that stacks the odds a bit too much against the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that to me means the Demand is going to retain their Trios championships here in Arena Mexico. Now we have a singles match born out of what occurred last week. Chris Statlander will be taking on Persephone. It's not known whether the CMLL Women's World Championship will be on the line or not. As of right now, I am not seeing from the preview that it is. It's more of just a grudge match between the two. And this goes all the way back to the fatal 4-way that the women had for the vacant, at the time, TBS championship that Hikaru Shida won. And that was partially because Persephone interfered after she was eliminated, beat up on Stat, which allowed Shida to get the win at the time. That was renewed a little bit last week when Maya World defended her TBS championship against Persephone. Shida came down and put a cane in the ring for Persephone to use on Maya World. Statlander stopped that from happening, allowing Maya World to retain her championship, and that's where this match comes in. So this feud has been building for quite some time. Basically all of Shida's TBS title reign, as well as what we've gotten so far out of Maya World's TBS title reign. I think big things are in the future for Persephone, and given the fact that she is more of a Mexico native rather than Statlander, to me makes me think Persephone is going to get the win here. Statlander is a TBS champion. She is a former women's champion. She has held most every singles accolade that AEW has to offer for its women competitors, so I don't think a loss hurts her here. However, I do think a win for Persephone does a lot to ratchet her up the card and in the tier levels of AEW's women's division, especially given the fact that this match is taking place in Arena Mexico. It gives her that sort of home arena and venue advantage, so I think Persephone takes the win here on her way to something of a bit more prominence. I don't know if we end up putting, let's say, the TBS championship on her at some point, or even have her maybe be one of Mercedes's projected first challengers if Mercedes does what I think she's going to do at All In and wins the AEW Women's World Championship. Either way, I think Persephone wins this match, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think the crowd will be hot for this match. Now we have a 6-man tag team match of Darby Allin, Jericho and the newly healed up Mystico taking on the Don Callis family of Hechicero, Kazuchika Okada, and Kevin Knight. And speaking of a hot crowd, if you want to see big crowd reactions, just wait until Mystico makes his entrance at Arena Mexico. If you have not seen this before, it is something to behold. It is very much akin to what Adam Copeland gets as far as being serenaded during his entrance from some of his more hot crowds like Toronto, or some of the audience that are, more nostalgia based and really love the Metalingus Copeland entrance. I am one of them. This is going to be a really fun spectacle. You've got Hechicero and Mystico in this one, to Arena Mexico native, so the crowd's going to be very hot behind both of those. And then you've got some very highly prominent wrestlers in former world champions like Darby Allin and Chris Jericho taking on the Don Callis family heavyweights of Okada and Kevin Knight, the current TNT champion. So there's a lot of, gravitas and prominence in this match. As far as who takes it, I think you're probably going to see the Don Callis family take this one, if only because they are the more regularly teaming up individuals. Darby Allin is probably building towards an all-in feud with Kevin Knight. I don't know what we're doing yet with Jericho and Mystico. Mystico, again, is just coming back from injury, whereas Jericho just wrapped up his feud, or so we believe, with Tommaso Ciampa. So we're not sure of what direction either of those guys are going to go yet, leading in towards the All-In pay-per-view, potentially that gauntlet match. But we do know that Knight and Darby Allin are going to move towards most likely a gimmick match. I still say a coffin match at All In for Knight's TNT Championship. And with that being said, I think it makes more sense to have the Don Callis boys win here and have Darby be chasing from behind a little bit that TNT Championship. So I'm going to go with the Callis team to win here, but I'm not 100% on this one. I think it could go either way. I just think the Callis family is the more defined team and has more direction heading into All In, so I'm going to give them the momentum-based win in Arena Mexico. Now, we have a Mexico City street fight that does not permit outside interference. I don't know how the hell that's going to work, but it's what we're doing, so cool. Mark Davis will be taking on Will Ospreay in this match, and they're going to go all over Arena Mexico. This is going to be so fun. Davis and Ospreay are two of the best in the company right now. Obviously, Ospreay is one of the three best in the world. I won't quite put Davis in that tier yet, but Mark Davis over the last year has been so good in the ring and has raised his stock so much that this is not a gimme match for Will Ospreay the way we would normally think it would be. Especially if you had booked this match a year ago, I'd just chuckle and say Ospreay wins handily, and this isn't even a contest. But given the fact that they've been 1-1 in singles competition, given the fact that Will Ospreay's singles win comes with the asterisk, as Mark Davis noted, as being mainly due to Death Rider interference, this is going to be a lot of fun, but I do think Ospreay takes the win here. I don't think it makes any sense to have your number one contender for the World Championship lose a match going into your biggest pay-per-view of the year, where he is going to challenge for that World Heavyweight Championship in his home country. There's no way that you're gonna, have Will Ospreay lose going into that. So to me, this is all for Will Ospreay, especially with the no outside interference aspect of it. If that wasn't a stipulation, I could see Kenny Omega getting involved. I could see the Don Callis family getting involved. I could even potentially see the Death Riders getting involved. But given that there's no outside interference, again, somehow in a street fight, I don't know how that works. But given that we're not doing outside interference of any kind, to me, in a clean 1-on-1 match, Will Ospreay heading into All In is not going to lose. So Will Ospreay gets the Duke here. Now we have another trios match on the card, this one of the women's variety, the Brawling Birds, who are basically your de facto number one contenders to the Women's World Tag Team Championships, that being Alex Windsor and Jamie Hayter, teaming with the AEW Women's World Champion Willow Nightingale against the Women's Tag Team Champions, the Divine Dominion of Lena Cross and Megan Bayne, and the Owen Hart Foundation Cup winner and number one contender for Willow's AEW Women's World Championship, that being Mercedes Moné. So this stems a lot from what happened last week with the Divine Dominion coming out and during that segment where Willow and Mercedes were facing off during Willow's championship celebration to sort of give her backup. And we have loosely seen them aligned, not in any formal way, but she has used the Divine Dominion for backup, that being Mercedes Moné, ever since winning the Owen Hart Cup. We haven't really seen a defined backstory for what that relationship is. We don't know if it's just Mercedes Moné throwing some cash a la MJF at the Divine Dominion, or if there's something else there that aligns them from a goals perspective. I'd be interested to see where they go with that. But I do think we're going to see the Divine Dominion and Mercedes Moné take this one. Mercedes is the challenger that we need to continue building up. I don't see her losing. The Divine Dominion have been dominant as women's tag team champions. I don't see them losing here. I think we see potentially Willow Nightingale maybe even eating the pin here, because I think we need to build up a little bit of curiosity of, is Willow going to be able to successfully defend her championship against Mercedes at All In? So I do think the heels win here. That said, I have called for a lot of heel wins on this show so far. I have called for Persephone winning. I've called for the Demand winning. I've called for the Death Riders winning. I've called for the DCF winning. And now I'm calling for the heels to win in this match. So I'm recognizing that I am very heavy on predicting heel victories so far. So take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. I will say I did not exactly like write all these down on paper and try to balance my predictions a little bit the way you would for booking a typical wrestling show. Maybe that's on me. I wanted to do this more off the cuff and based on feel in reviewing the card. So if, one or two more of the heel teams win, I think that could make sense. And I think it could certainly make sense for the Brawling Birds and Willow to win here. Especially if you want to have one of the birds go over, one of the Divine Dominion, to make them seem like more legitimate contenders and get them officially on the card, considering that hasn't been announced yet. Although we all know it's going to happen. That could make sense to me. But at first glance, I think the heel team of the Divine Dominion and Mercedes wins going into All In. Now, we have what is likely going to be the main event. It is the AEW International Championship on the line with Kyle Fletcher, your international champion, taking on Speedball Mike Bailey. And this comes from Mike Bailey winning the six-pack ladder match back at Redemption in order to gain this shot, and he asked for it specifically to be in Arena Mexico at Grand Slam Mexico at this stacked pay-per-view level card that we're getting on free TV somehow. Tony Khan, you freaking spoil us. And this match itself is going to spoil us so much because Kyle Fletcher is one of those three best in the world alongside Will Ospreay and probably Kenny Omega, although, that's up for debate. I would put MJF in that conversation as well. Speedball Mike Bailey is not far behind. That man is incredible in the ring. To me, the only thing that holds him back a little bit is he is a little bit too Karate Kid one-dimensional in his character. I'd like to see there be a little bit more nuance and development to who the Speedball character really is and what his motivations are. We've seen that a little bit with his prodding of Kevin Knight in recent weeks. I'd like to see that development continue a bit more, especially coming out of All In. But this is going to be such a great match. The in-ring quality that we're going to get here is legitimately pay-per-view level. And this is probably the match I am looking forward to most on the entire card. These guys are going to tear the fucking house down, pardon my French, and I cannot wait to see what they do at a hot Arena Mexico at a card of this level for this championship. Now, as far as the prediction goes, I don't see Kyle Fletcher losing this match in any clean sense. That is not to say that it's not impossible that Konosuke Takeshita or Kazuchika Okada get involved in this match to cause maybe a distraction loss of some kind, but I don't think whatever happens that Kyle Fletcher is going to lose the International Championship going into All In. I think it's possible that he loses in a way, maybe a countout or a disqualification that allows Speedball to get added to a multi-man match. We've all sort of speculated going into All In Wembley that we're going to get Kyle Fletcher versus Okada versus Takeshita in a triple threat match for this international championship. With how they've booked Speedball lately, I can easily see Speedball being added to that mix. And if we get a screwy finish in this match that gives us a no contest or a DQ finish of some kind, that to me would make a great deal of sense and as a vehicle to add Speedball into that. Because if you don't do that, I don't see where else besides the gauntlet match you put Speedball in that card, and there's no way you're leaving him off of it. But realistically, there's no way Kyle Fletcher loses this match and loses the championship. So If we're just talking a clean match finish, I'm going to say Kyle Fletcher goes over. That said, I think we're going to get shenanigans in this match. I think we're going to get outside interference. And I think we're going to then see Speedball added to the equation for what will become, I'm going to say, a four corners match, or however you want to phrase it, between Fletcher, Okada, Takeshita, and himself at All In for the International Championship. So that wraps us up covering what we're going to get at Grand Slam Mexico. It is obviously a super stacked card. I am incredibly excited for it. What do you guys think is the match you are most looking forward to? What storyline developments are you most looking forward to? What do you expect to be maybe announced for the All-In card based on what's going to happen at Grand Slam Mexico? What's, developments do you see and are predicting that you're most excited for? Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. I'm going to be glued to my, streaming services to watch this match. I cannot wait for this card. An 8-match Dynamite at a hot arena Mexico in international soil is going to be such a treat to watch. The last time AEW ran a arena Mexico, it was really, really fun. Getting to see AEW in non-traditional domestic venues is always great to see. We even saw just how great of a crowd like Detroit could be last week when they ran Collision and Dynamite there. They were such a hot crowd. I also expect the Motor City Machine Guns to show up and make an appearance here, so they'll probably be involved in some capacity as well. Hopefully Tekla is on this card as well, maybe to further her Stardom feud and get something on the books for herself for All In, because we don't have that right now, and that is a travesty in and of itself. But let me know in the comments what you're expecting, what you're most hyped for, what you're maybe a little bit underwhelmed by, and what you see happening as a result of this card leading us in to All In Wembley. So that does it for our preview for Grand Slam Mexico. I was able to get this all into one part, so props to me for being a little bit short-winded on this one. For an 8-match card, getting this all under 30 minutes, I am pleased with. So thanks again for watching Duality of Wrestling. Appreciate you guys so much checking out the show and the channel. I am Christian. I will see you on the next one.